we had the community. It was all us. Cooperative economics was there. It gave you a different sense of pride, a different sense of possibility, which I'll be honest with you, I think is a challenge in society now. And that's why it's so important for platforms like this and others and, authors like yourself who are writing stories to kind of show the value that, people of African descent are bringing to society so that we can then show the next generation the possibilities. Like you were able to see land ownership, you were able to see cooperation, you were able to see community. We're able to show that through the creative process now in hopes of inspiring the next generation behind us.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, man, one thing I will say growing up in Little Africa helped me do it, helped me be resourceful, because nobody there had money or anything like that. I'm the first male on any side of my family tree as far as mom, dad, and stepdad to go to a 4-year school. So what I learned from it is it don't take all that money and all that crap to make yourself successful. It takes people cultivating you. And that's what a small environment and community did. It helped people cultivate me. It kept me out of trouble. It made the people who I was walking down the street, they knew my name and knew my dad, and they'd call him if I was doing something stupid. So it wasn't all that you got to call the police in to police the world. It was more like, we're going to police each other. We're going to hold each other accountable. If you do something stupid, we're going to say, hey, come here before I call your dad. And it just gave us it just allowed you to be who you were. People allowed you to grow up who you wanted to be. And it wasn't all that craziness that you had to worry about. And that's one thing that when you get to cities and people start thinking about let's throw money at the problems. That's not the solution. Let's throw people at the problem. Let's throw villages.
Pause. Whoa. You can't jump. You can't jump over that, brother. You said, no, I'm serious. You dropped the bar, and fellas, ladies listening to, I hope you caught what he said. We don't need to throw money at the problem. We need to throw people at the problem. And that is such an interesting perspective, because you talked about growing, and I jotted down this note, cultivating greatness, right? It's all about cultivating greatness, all about cultivating the land, cultivating the community, cultivating the minds. You know what I'm saying? Like I heard Tupac had a quote. And Tupac said, I might not change the world, but I guarantee I'll spark the mind of the one who will change the world. Like if you stop and you think about that, it's about cultivating greatness. It's not about throwing money at a problem. It's about throwing people at a problem. And when you throw people at a problem, especially if you throw the right people at the problem, those people stay around and you build relationships, you build communities, you build these villages that you talked about where you saw this rich environment, this rich culture. And it wasn't even about money. Y'all owned the land. You had stuff to do. You knocked on people's doors, but doggone it, you had people. It wasn't about the money. You had people. Marinate on that, fellas. That was a bar dropped by Bryson Thompson Sr.
Appreciate it, bro. And I'm going to be honest with you. You dropped one of my favorite lines in the world, because I feel like I am the guy Tupac was talking about. Like, I don't know if you feel like that, but I always felt like the rose in the concrete. Like, I always felt like you put me anywhere I can grow. And Tupac was one of my greatest inspirations. So I'm glad that you threw the Tupac thing in there, because he was one of the guys who cultivated the mindset when you're talking about being young. When you're talking about Tupac, you're talking about 10 years old for me, 9 years old for me, learning who Tupac was, all the way up until he died. I was probably about 13 years old at that point. And I remember hearing his death and I cried. You know what I'm saying? I cried when Tupac died, because I was like inspired by the stuff he was doing, and not by like the gangster stuff, but like when you went and watched videos and interviews and stuff like that, you knew what he was talking about. And this is the type of stuff he was talking about in the first place. So,
dude, yeah. I'm gonna tell you what's powerful about that is it was interesting thinking about Tupac specifically. It's the complexity, right? So the brother was a complex individual. He wasn't complicated. He was complex. And so when you think about the Black male experience, and we're Black fathers, we're growing up, or, we have kids that are growing up in the world now, and we've grown up and are in the process of navigating it. We're not complicated. It's complex. It's complexity, meaning there's a lot of different sides. So you mentioned the gangster side did not inspire you from Tupac, but when you start thinking about the activism, you look at this brother. He was in the streets. He could bang with the Bloods and the Crips. He could roll with them, do that. But then his mama was a Black Panther. He grew up around the Panthers and activism and Afeni Shakur and, Assata Shakurs and this. And I mean, he was in the mix of all of that, right? And he had this dual thing in which he was trying to figure it out, but he had a complexity. He wasn't complicated. He had complexity. And I think sometimes the African-American male specifically experience gets misunderstood because of its complexity. Not that we're complicated, we're complex. And we're complex because of our history. And that also gives us the ability to connect with a lot of different people from a lot of walks of life because of that complexity. Again, it's a difference.